Hi, and welcome back to Trench Commander. I'm the Trench Commander.
And I'm the Trench Captain.
Today, we are going to be showing you how to play a little game that we made up with Pacific. We call it the 1936 Sino-Japanese War. So, we're just going to explain and how to play. And we also have these setup charts and a little rule book that will be in the description. But make sure you watch this video because there's a couple things I did not include in the rulebook because it's a bit too complex. But I'm just going to go ahead and tell you how to play. So the Allied powers includes the ROC, Communist China, we use German guys for them, USSR, the Far East Command, and the French. And the Axis team composes of Japan and Thailand right there. So to set it up, you're going to want to take the left half of the Pacific board. I'm not sure about the second edition. You probably can, but I don't have the second edition. I just have the first edition. We're eventually going to get the second edition, but we do not have it yet. So I'm not sure what the second edition board looks like, so if there's a couple changes on the second edition board, go ahead and tell me and I can get some easy fixes for them. So the way the Axis wins is they have to own 9 industrial complexes. So let me check real quick. Yes, 9 industrial complexes. As you see, we have greenhouses scattered around the board. Those houses represent industrial complexes. And another unique thing about this game, I don't think I included it in the rule book. Yes, I did not. You can build as many people as you want in any industrial complex. There's no limit, which is pretty nice, especially for Japan. When they come crashing into China, they can put a buttload of guys right into the Chinese lines. So, the little greenhouses, we put them on because they're kind of the objectives for the Japanese and Thailand. So, just to let them be spotted a bit easier, we added a little color. And for the Allies to win, they need to kick all of Thailand and the Japanese land troops off of the mass of Asia. So they can still have spaces in Asia, on the mass of Asia. So that's not including Japan and all these islands, as long as they don't have anybody on any of this stuff. But let's say they have some Air Force in there, that doesn't count. Allies would win. You need at least 1 ground unit at the end of a round. Well, I guess at the end of the Thailand player's turn, because it's not like France is going to somehow activate some unknown Thailand bunker underground. But that's how you win. So to set it up, we used some French soldiers from World War I. You can also use French soldiers from Europe, or if you bought some from historical board gaming, or whatever. You can just use any French soldiers, or if you don't even want to have to use French soldiers, but you do have French seals, you can put seals under different guys to represent the French, or anything like that. Up there, we use the Anzac for Thailand, and we also use American units other than infantry as the Chinese. Right here you see the Flying Tiger. An ability of the Flying Tiger, I have this in the rulebook, but it's just like a fighter except it attacks out of 4 and defends out of 5, but it cannot, however, be replaced. And it's controlled by the Chinese. And another interesting thing is China gets the points for the Philippines, because America and China were on pretty good terms, and America was helping them out a lot. So these Chinese guys represent the Americans in the Philippines. we used some some Germans for the communist China army. A special thing about communist China is their infantry attack at twos. So, because they were more of the guerrilla forces during the war, that's something that we added in, and we just used Russian guys for the Soviet Union up there. So now I'm going to tell you just some of the interesting things that are different about this game. And one last thing before we get into all that, you will realize that we have some pieces of paper on the board. Those represent IPCs. So Borno is not making 4 IPCs this round. In this game. Instead, it's making 2. And also, you in no time can move units into Sumatra, Java, Celebes, Dutch New Guinea, Northern Territory, South Australia, or Western Australia. Those are not part of the map. Neither is this season up here with no number. Or that one.
Same with these 2 little spaces.
Yeah.
Those are not spaces.
Just like if you play Pacific, those aren't spaces on the board unless you combine it. But anyway, that's all for the normal stuff. I'll show you an example of how you set something up. So Japan. Oh yeah, by the way, Japan's worth 15 IPCs. Suyuyan is worth 4. And India is worth 5. Siam worth 4. French Indochina worth 5. Those are the only special ones. So Japan, you probably know how to set this up mostly. The only thing that might be different is the industrial complexes and AA guns. You might not know that, but you probably do. So you just place on. So this means 7 infantry, 2 artillery, 1 mechanized infantry, 1 tank, 4 fighters, 4 tactical bombers, industrial complex, and an AA gun. So that's kind of what that, you just set that up likewise. It's not 2 infantry, 1 artillery. You go from that side. You might be realizing this. I've already made that correction on the thing, but this is the rough draft, so I was just making a quick correction on there. So, also it says how many IPCs they make around at the start. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the turn order real quick. So the first people to move naturally is Japan. So it's Japan, and then Communist China and USSR kind of share a common turn, but I'll get more into that later. Communist China goes next, then USSR, then ROC, which if you don't know what that means, it's Republic of China, then France, then Thailand, and then Far East Command, which is just the Commonwealth, finishes it off. So, there's a decently interesting political situation. At the start of the game, there's kind of 2 separate wars going on. It might not be 100% politically correct. This game isn't 100% historically correct. We did do some research on it before we made it, but it's not all the way historically correct. Also, one setup note I have, this transport has an infantry and an artillery in it, which never happened in a normal Axis and Allies game, but it is in this one, because this is not an Axis and Allies game. The political situation is at the start of the game, Japan is at war with Republic of China and Communist China. And Thailand is at war with France and England. During round 4, everybody is at war with each other. So, France couldn't move people into the Chinese territory because they're not their allies yet in this war. So, during round 4, everybody's at war except Russia, who comes in a bit later. At the start of round 5, Russia has an ability that makes Yakutat SSR, which is that, their capital right there. It makes that worth 4, and they collect that extra income at the start of round 5, and then they are joining the war in round 6. So no people can enter Russia, and no Russians can exit Russia, except communist Chinese men. They can enter Russia if they want. But now that we have that, I am going to, let's see, yes, the special abilities. So, each team has their own special ability, except France and England, I believe. But Japan, they have one at the start of the first turn. During the spending phase, they have 50 IPCs to spend. As you see, we have the setup chart right there, and they have 50 IPCs at the start of the game. That does not mean that their income is 50 IPCs. That just means they have 50 IPCs to spend during the first phase. Technically, they only make 22, I think it is. But they get those 50 IPCs kind of as an economy boost at the start of the Sino-Japanese War. Communist China, I already said theirs, but I'll go into more detail. Their infantry attack at 2s, which is really nice. Once you're getting pushed back, you can send in a bunch of infantry who are really cheap and kind of take out a couple guys. But the downside of that is they can only buy infantry. Next is the USSR. Their tanks, so I'll go into tanks later, they're not the same, but their tanks attack at 3s and defend at 3s no matter what. I'm going to tell you more about why that's important once we go into the units. But their tanks attack at 3 and defend at 3. Another special ability is they can donate. So, Communist China, when they collect their income, you always add it to the Soviets' income. And the Soviets can donate at up to half of their money, rounded up, to the communists during the communists' spending phase. So, they can do that. And next, China, they get 1 free infantry turn in Shizwakan. I'm probably not saying that right, but Shizwakan. But, oh, Shizwakan. Okay, I give up. But they get 1 free infantry in there during their mobilized units phase that represent how a lot of militia came because China was very populated. If, however, Su Yuyan and King Su, yep. If both of those are controlled by the Axis powers, then they get 2 guys to put in that place during the mobilized unit's turn. By the way, those guys are free and they're normal infantry. And Thailand, their artillery attack at 3 and defend at 3. So that's a nice little thing for Thailand. So, onto the unit rules. There's not very many. But mechanized infantry can tow artillery. So let me get an example ready right here. This mechanized infantry could tow this artillery 2 spaces with it. Even blitzing. So like a tank, if it was blitzing, this mechanized infantry could blitz along with the tank and also tow along an artillery. But let's say there were 2 artillery, the mechanized infantry could only haul 1 of them. So that's the mechanized infantry ability. All other abilities are the same for mechanized infantry and artillery and such. Tanks, they attack at a 3 and defend at a 2. But if there is any enemy artillery when they're attacking, they only attack at a 2. But even if there was like 5 tanks, but only 1 enemy artillery, all the tanks would still fire at 2s. And the last rule is there are no strategic bombers in this version. Just because it's decently complex, we might add some in if we continue to develop this game, but we decided not to right then. So that's mostly it. We're going to be coming out with a gameplay video of this. We're also making another version of a game, but I'm not going to give any spoilers, except that it doesn't have anything to do with this specific board. And that's all for today. Make sure to check out my other channel at Babadooda. It has the link in the description below. And as always, happy shooting.